What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Monday, July 18th, 2016. Getting into the tail end of the month. Today is the start of the Republican Convention. We got a lot of stuff going on here today. And the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. And obviously the big news, you wouldn't know it to look at the corporate media. I'm looking at Fox News, and they're alternating between the anti-Trump protests at the Republican Convention and a rehash of Baton Rouge. It's like Turkey has just evaporated from the corporate media ever since the coup failed. Okay? Now, there are two prevailing theories going on as to what happened in Turkey. One theory is that Erdogan set this all up himself as a modern Reichstag fire to consolidate power. And that story is coming primarily from that cleric, Gulen, who's living in the United States, linked to the CIA, being protected. And the other theory is that this was an attempted coup by the United States, because they were unhappy with the way that Erdogan was starting to strain at the leash, so to speak. And this would not be unique. Remember the history of Saddam Hussein. As long as Saddam did what his U.S. masters said, they supported him, they got him into power, they gave him weapons for the war against Iran. But as soon as Saddam started acting like he was head of state of Iraq, selling Iraq's oil for the euro, they went in and destroyed him. That's how the U.S. plays that game. And I'm not the only person who's out there saying this is stinking of another U.S. coup d'etat, and they botched it rather badly. Let's see, story out of the Daily Mail. A U.S.-based Turkish cleric facing extradition over botched rebellion claims president orchestrated plot to justify a clampdown on civil rights. So this article is basically identifying this cleric as the source of the story that Erdogan just did this to himself. Now, we know this guy's connected to the CIA, and if the U.S. was behind the coup, and Erdogan is acting like he thinks that's the case, then of course this cleric is going to try and protect his sponsors. It also means the U.S. will not extradite him to Turkey, because Erdogan would put him on public display as proof of Washington, D.C.'s treachery. And that means U.S.-Turkish relations have just melted down, and Kerry's scrambling to try and either bludgeon or browbeat Erdogan back into compliance. I don't think it's going to happen, because Erdogan's just turned into a wild man. He sees himself as the new sultan of a new Ottoman empire. Now, there's another article coming out of Global Research up in Canada. Why the failed Turkish coup attempt wasn't a false flag power grab by Erdogan. And they're going down all the various bits and pieces of information. In particular, the way Turkey has cut off that Incirlik air base. The power is still out there. There's a no-fly zone over it. We basically have the United States, for the first time in history, cut off from its own nuclear weapons, because there are over 50 of the B-61 gravity nuclear weapons stored at that base. And Turkey's already arrested the commander of that base. And prosecutors and police from Turkey are in there, apparently looking for any indications as to who was behind this attempted coup d'etat. Now, after he was arrested, the commander of this air base requested asylum in the United States. The U.S. has rejected that. They're going to hang him out to dry, because if they said, yes, you can come hide out here, it makes the U.S. look even more guilty. So, let's see. Let's talk about those H-bombs, because there is a remote possibility that Erdogan could grab those. There are over 50 of these B-61 nuclear bombs, gravity bombs. They don't have rockets. They don't have any self-propulsion. They're designed to be hooked onto the underside of a supersonic airplane, carried over the target, and dropped. They are selectable yield weapons from 0.3 to 340 kilotons. These are big bombs. And if Erdogan were to grab them, then he would be a nuclear power in the Middle East to match that of Israel itself. Which is why if Erdogan does try and grab those weapons, Israel may just nuke the entire air base preemptively. That'll kick things off. First of all, it will let the world know that, yes, indeed, Israel does have atomic bombs, which makes every penny taken from you, the American taxpayer, and given to Israel illegal under the Symington Amendment to the Foreign Appropriations Act and the Glenn Act. So they're searching that base right now, and Erdogan is behaving like he thinks somebody from outside did this. And it doesn't really matter if he did it himself or it came from outside. He's certainly going to take advantage of the situation to purge his government of opposition. Now, the U.S. is in a serious, serious position here because the U.S. needs Turkey to put pressure on Russia, but they're not going to hand over Gulen, this cleric, and they are greatly at odds. If Turkey discovers evidence that the U.S. was involved in the coup, that's going to be it. The U.S. is refusing to extradite this guy over there. Gulen might be on the verge of a sudden illness or serious depression or a bad case of small plainitis to get them out of this mess. Turkey is out there talking tough, literally saying that they will go to war with any country supporting exiled cleric Fethullah Gulen. And he's in the United States right now, and a lot of people are saying, is Turkey threatening war against the United States? And if he is, that's why we have to be worried about those nuclear weapons stored at the Incirlik Air Base. Now, I got emails from people saying, well, there's all these security systems and all the, the launch codes and all the rest of that stuff. That entire system is set up to prevent the accidental or malicious deployment of nuclear weapons while they're still under U.S. control. If Erdogan grabs those weapons, it's only a matter of time before they figure out how to bypass all those interlocks in order to be able to use those weapons. Another article, this came out of Kawai Lepele WordPress, behind the CIA's desperate Turkey coup attempt. And this may be the reason why the corporate media isn't talking about Turkey here in the United States. Because a lot of people are seeing U.S. fingerprints all over it, if for no other reason than the U.S. has played this game with other countries time after time after time after time after time. Another article that came on out from Russia Insider, Hell hath no fury like a Teflon Sultan. And basically saying that Erdogan is absolutely angry, but he's taking advantage of the situation. They've already fired 1,000 judges, arrested 2,000 or 3,000 people. Some of them are already dead. And right now, despite the pretensions to democracy, Erdogan is functionally in charge of the entire Turkish government. The executive and the legislative. Remember, Parliament got destroyed. And he just purged the judicial of anybody who wasn't loyal to him. Another story coming out of the dailysaba.com. Coup attempt, U.S. must prove loyalty to Turkey. And basically, in a nutshell, the Turks are suspicious of U.S. hand in what happened in Turkey. So am I, for that matter. In the Middle East, it doesn't take too much argument to convince people U.S. and Western countries are behind these mass political movements because of that long list of these covert interventions. Now, over in Serbia, their foreign minister is saying that the Turkish coup was plotted to stop the mending of Russia-Turkey ties. And that seems to be what triggered it. Turkey moving closer to Russia, Turkey moving closer to China, Turkey even moving closer to Israel. And U.S. policy in the Middle East wasn't ready to accommodate that. Now, the U.S. has denied any role in the Turkish coup, saying that even saying that would harm the relations between Turkey and the United States. And at this point, I'd say they're pretty messed up already. John Kerry is out there denying the U.S. had any part to do with it. So is the U.S. Ambassador to Turkey, John Bass. Now that it's been officially denied, we know it must be true. Let's take a phone call. Kathleen in Paris, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael.
Bonjour.
Two things. Yeah. Hi. Two things I wanted to say about the coup in Turkey, which you're talking about now. I saw an excellent co-effort between Sybil Edmonds of Newsbud and the Corbett Report. So in either place, the Newsbud to do with Sybil Edmonds or the Corbett Report, you can have a interview about her opinion, which is, very important, about the cleric that you were talking about. What's his name? The cleric?
Yeah, I erased that already.
Yeah. Well, anyway, she thinks it is very, very important. She thinks that this is a trial-run coup, that, they're testing the waters, and that the real coup will be soon. And she thinks that they will replace Erdogan with much worse than he is.
Could very well be. The cleric's name is Fethullah Gulen. I'm trying to keep all these names. Gulen, yes. And there may be something to her concerns, because apparently there are 42 helicopters missing from Turkey's military inventory. Nobody knows where they went. And obviously 42 helicopters would provide a tremendous advantage to somebody who's attempting a second coup. And I don't expect the U.S. to quit just because they fell flat on their face the first time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I was going to speak about those mysteriously disappearing helicopters. Very important. The other thing I was wanting to say a word about was that I had heard something about the Nice truck attack was a farce and it didn't happen and blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I decided to look on images and just to see if there were some images, because that would help me decide if it, if some people are saying that it's a farce and it didn't even happen. So when I went on images, if I clicked on one of the images, immediately I was switched to an article in Time that said, it was done by ISIS, and then it would put up a vacation publicity for going to Israel and Tel Aviv.
Well, let me tell you what I think happened in Nice, because I'm looking at this. The guy's mental health. He was on prescription antidepressants. He'd been fired from prior delivery jobs for road rage and everything. For road rage. He plowed into 4 trucks at one point. My assessment of this situation is this guy just flipped out on his meds, and it's a classic case of road rage. But politicians are always thinking, how can I use this to push my agenda? Hollande is using this Tunisian road rage to justify increasing airstrikes in Syria and Iraq. I mean, there's no connection there whatsoever. But they're saying, I have an incident, how can I use it?
Deployed his aircraft carrier the day before.
Yes. Well, I think that's timing. To me, it just feels like this guy just flipped out and ran down those people, and everybody said, oh, good, we've got a nice bloody incident, let's turn it into a terror attack. The fact of the matter is the French authorities have come on out and said, despite all the propaganda all over the media, they cannot find any connection between this guy and ISIS. He wasn't a good Muslim. He drank. He had extramarital affairs. He did drugs. He beat up his wife. He never went to the mosque. He didn't observe Ramadan. This guy is just, an average Joe who just life overwhelmed him, and he flipped out. And they're trying to turn him into this ISIS terrorist to keep pushing this terror agenda.
Were there guns and grenades and weapons in the truck?
Well, he apparently had one handgun that he fired on police with, but apparently he had some of those plastic replica weapons as well that don't fire. And why he had them, I don't know. A lot of people like to collect them and play with them because they're very convincing. Again, to me, it just feels like this guy flipped out and it was road rage and everybody's trying to hop on board and spin it for their own agenda, and they're just coming out with all.
No, there was not an arsenal of guns and weapons and grenades and in the truck.
No. The media is trying to paint this guy as a dangerous terrorist to suit political agendas, but the French authorities are saying they have been looking. They cannot find anything that links this guy to ISIS. They've already been through his home and all of his papers. And this is just a guy who was in the middle of a divorce. He was depressed. He was hopped up on antidepressant medication. He had a prior history of road rage. He drank, did drugs. I mean, the guy just flipped out. That's my read of the situation. And everybody's just hopping on board and trying to recast him as a terrorist to suit that agenda.
Yeah, that's what I thought too, and I told my son that, and he said, well, okay, maybe, but then what about all the guns and weapons in the back of the truck? And so that's why I was trying to find out if, in fact, the truck was loaded with weapons.
Well, again, we've had the same media saying there were weapons and guns and all the rest of it, with the same media saying this guy was linked with ISIS. Now they're saying that he sent $100,000 to his family. All we have is an assertion. And one of the things that's a dead giveaway about all of this is that the corporate media has abandoned its principle of having a primary source and an independent confirmation before they move forward on a story. The one about the $100,000, there's no confirmation for it. It's based on a single claim by a single individual, and they ran with it as headline news because they're trying to recast this guy, remake him as a dangerous terrorist.
And then all the others pick up on the story.
Yeah, well, at this point in time, you shouldn't accept anything coming out of the corporate media or a government spokesman's mouth at face value. The prudent, safe assumption is it's
I know that,
it's
and
lies, it's spin, it's and you have to double check everything that they're saying. And again, they were out there trying to say this guy was a loyal member of ISIS, and the French authorities are saying no. But this is condemnation by media smear, and I'll give you another example.
Exactly. And let me restate that if you try to confirm some of the images on Google Images, you get sent to Israeli publicity and a Time magazine article saying that ISIS has claimed responsibility for the truck attack.
Well, anybody can call up Time magazine and say, "I'm ISIS, you schmucks. We claim credit." Again, it's not like ISIS issues identification cards, so you're talking to somebody from ISIS. I mean, again, to give you another example, following the shoot down of Malaysian Airlines 17, the media was always out there. Russia did it, Russia did it, Russia did it, Russia did it. Now the independent investigations come out with a report saying we don't really know who did it, but for most people who've been slaves to the corporate media, they're already convinced Russia did it, even though there's no evidence to support that whatsoever. And they're doing the same thing with this guy in Nice. That's the media's job, to make you believe things.
And then if you're just trying to, on your own, get to the bottom of something and you decide to Google some images, you get Time telling you, what some schmuck said.
Well, we've seen many examples recently where Google and Facebook are altering their search engines and their links and their results. They're fully on board with supporting the official story. I mean, if you really think about it, from their size and their money, Google and Facebook and all those other online social platforms, they are part of the corporate media. Even though they're running in the computers, they're corporate media outlets, and they are just as subservient to the will of the U.S. government as any other corporate media outlet.
Well, that's why I enjoy listening to you so much, and thank you very much for taking my call.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to take Jason in Tucson real quick, and after that, no more calls about Nice because we got to focus on what's going on in Turkey and at the Republican convention. So, Jason, what's on your mind?
Hey, thank you, Michael. I just wanted to point out something. I do work on semi-trucks, and I know a first responder who's had to respond to someone on a bike getting hit by a truck. Literally, a semi-truck will pull you under the wheels, and it just pops you. It smears you all over the road. There's nothing left.
There's two problems. There's two problems. Okay, please. Okay. All right, I'm going to respond to this when we come on back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And before we take more phone calls, more developments going on with Turkey. John Kerry is now threatening Turkey with expulsion from NATO. Because Erdogan is planning to impose the death penalty on the people they've arrested. And I can imagine why Kerry might be very nervous about that, because according to the Turkish foreign minister, military from that NATO base at Incirlik were involved in the coup attempt. Apparently, the evidence trail is pointing squarely at outside Western players in this coup d'etat. And if its goal was to bring Turkey back into the warm embrace of the United States and NATO, it has backfired terribly, because it's just been announced that Erdogan and Putin are going to meet in the first week of August. So it's gone back the other way. Okay, let's see. I'm looking at calls. Anna in New Hampshire, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing fine.
I am actually watching the news as we speak, and the delegates are walking out of the Trump convention because they failed to do a roll call. You were
what do you
aware
mean?
of any of this?
No, I wasn't aware of that. I mean, I knew they were planning on doing some kind of a disruptive situation. Okay, but
it appears to be working.
Yeah, I mean, the delegates are failing to do their duty. I mean, are they that scared of Donald Trump? Are they that ready to hand the White House to Hillary Clinton, where they're going to play like this? Those delegates are supposed to be sent there by the state parties, to do their job. And just to walk out of the convention, I mean, that's ridiculous. And I don't understand why they have a problem with a roll call vote. Yes, it will take a very, very long time to do. But, I mean, this is just pure political theater. This is absurd. I mean, the Republican Party,
ridiculous with everything.
The Republican Party is destroying itself, in their haste to get Donald Trump, and the numbers are against him.
I agree completely.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
I just thought you would want to be aware.
Yeah,
I just saw it on MSNBC. I haven't watched it for a long period of time, but it appears to be happening now. Colorado delegates walked off.
Oh, just the Colorado delegates. Oh, okay. Well, all right. Well, I'll take a look for that here. Thank you for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Steve in California. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. Well, this Rio Olympics thing with, the timing and placement of this, trying to make sure that Russia's athletes, they can compete in the Rio Olympics is, they just keep pushing and pushing and poking. And to get their war started is quite obvious what they're doing, or this would have been an issue a long, long time ago. They're trying every avenue to get Russia to bite.
Yeah, they are. They've been trying up there in Ukraine. They were trying to do it in Syria. Our U.S. government is desperate for a real world war because they think that's the only thing that's going to save the economy, or at least give them something to blame a crashing economy on. Because if the economy comes down and they don't have somebody to blame it on, we, the American people, are going to be pointing the finger of guilt where it richly deserves to go. Wall Street and Washington, D.C. corruption.
Yeah. Hey, one last question here. I listened to a little bit of NPR on the way out and driving through some errands. I hate to listen to it, but there was nothing else on. But they were talking about somebody on the floor at the RNC talking about asking the delegates to vote their conscience. Now, correct me, give me some information on that. Do the delegates have that choice to say, I'm not going to cast?
No, they don't. They actually don't. They tried to change the rules of the convention to unbind all delegates and let the delegates vote for who they wanted to, forgetting that under the principles of democracy, those delegates are there to represent the voters of their state. And this move to unbind failed in the Rules Committee. Because of the realization, it's going to send a message to the voters that they've lost complete control of their government, and people aren't going to be willing to put up with all the abuse we get from government without that illusion that somehow we voted for all of this.
Yeah. Well, he made the argument that we're a private organization and we can go outside and vote our conscience who we want. That's the argument he made, which was interesting.
Yeah, but these delegates aren't voting as citizens. They're voting as delegates. That's the difference. That's the problem there. We got to let you go, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And before we take more news and more phone call here, the corporate media is now starting to report on the battle on the floor of the GOP convention. And responding to that last caller, it's important to remember something. Those delegates are not there voting as private citizens. They are representatives of the will of the voters of their state. And that's what their job is. It's like if you hire somebody to paint your house green, and you show up and the house is yellow, and the painter says, well, I thought it was going to look better that way. That's not the painter's job. If the voters of a state vote for Donald Trump and their delegate says, I'd rather vote for somebody else, I think it's better, it's exactly the same thing. This idea of being allowed to vote their conscience doesn't apply to representatives of the will of the state voters. That's where that argument breaks down. And, of course, all the Democratic strategists, they're banging their hands together. Oh, look, it's all in disarray and it's chaos, and this is going to be great for Hillary Clinton. I got to tell you, I have never been as ashamed of our political system as this year. I love America, I love the American people, but our political system is an absolute disaster, and it's a humiliation that we go on pretending this is a republic with democratically elected leadership. All right, let's grab Danny in Oklahoma. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, thanks for taking my call. Just jumped into the conversation. It came out on RT that the troops involved in the coup thought that they were taking place in a military exercise, and after they were caught and they were interrogated, that's what they told the interrogators. And it could just be another ploy for Erdogan to stage against his own troops to acquire more power. That could be one reason. I really don't know.
Okay, we got a really bad phone connection, so I'm going to let you go, and then I'm going to reply. So thank you very much for the phone call. Well, obviously, if this was a CIA operation, they're not going to be able to go out and convince all the Turkish soldiers to go along with it. All they have to do is convince the commanders. And the commanders will send out the troops and say, trust us, it's just a drill. It's just an exercise, nothing to worry about. Go on down and take control of that bridge. That's the explanation for that. Now then, different view coming from the Turkish newspapers. Apparently, there seem to find indications that Israel may have been involved in this coup attempt as well. Probably in partnership with the United States of America, just like we saw with 9/11. Apparently, Turkish F-16s launched airstrikes against tanks outside the presidential palace. And, by the way, as a side note, you should see that palace Erdogan built for himself. It's 30 times the size of the White House. Cost 400 million pounds, I think. It's just absolutely enormous. They started building it in 2011. It's finished, and it's the palace of the Sultan all over again here. Now, apparently over in Istanbul, the deputy mayor is in critical condition. Gunmen stormed his office and shot him in the head. This may not be over. If the U.S. is behind this coup attempt, they're not going to quit despite the failure. Look how long they persisted in Syria trying to get Assad out. This is not going to go away. All righty, now here's where it gets really interesting. Article that came out of the Daily Caller, where ties between the Clintons and this Fethullah Gulen are starting to emerge. Apparently, a lot of this Gulen's supporters are heavy donors to Hillary's campaign and that charitable foundation. So the Clintons are linked in with this whole mess. And there's a published list of some of these donors. The headline on WhatReallyHappened.com, Gulen Movement Clinton Campaign Donors. Now, that may be a good reason for Erdogan not to want Hillary Clinton to be the next president of the United States of America. So far, number of arrests in Turkey, 6,000. And like I said before, it doesn't matter if Erdogan did a false flag or if he's responding to an outside attempt by the CIA. He's still going to use it as an excuse to consolidate his power and grow his popularity. He's cleaning out the army of any potential future attempts, cleaning out the judicial system. He's basically got the U.S. and NATO by the gonadal tissue. He's also holding the entrance to the Black Sea, which may be why Russia wants to make nice with him. So he's taking advantage of the situation, and a lot of these people who are arrested may have done nothing regarding the coup, but it's an opportunity to get rid of opponents. And there's actually a part of the Rivero family history that's relevant here, because when my ancestors were living in Portugal, where they fled after the Spanish Inquisition, there was an attempt to assassinate the King of Portugal, which failed. And the king did exactly the same thing. Anybody he didn't like was targeted, including my ancestors, which is why they then left for Shanghai. And there's nothing in our family history to indicate we had anything at all to do with the assassination attempt. But it's a good opportunity for Erdogan to clean house. Now, amazingly enough, this coup has resulted in the delay of the UNESCO Temple Mount vote in Istanbul, which is very convenient for Israel, which does not expect to do well in that. Over in Armenia, there's been a police station stormed. Hostages are taken over there. The whole world is going nuts. And finally, Gary Bernstein, who's a former top CIA officer, is saying this is going to get ugly because Obama has lost control of the Middle East. They were controlling the Middle East in the classic way, keep everybody fighting with each other, keep them at each other's throats like they're trying to do here in the United States with the Black Lives Matter movement and the white people. And all of a sudden, one of their main players has gone rogue, and the entire interlocked strategy has shattered. And a lot of people are agreeing with this over at the Sacker.is. The new Middle East, exit America, enter Russia. And here is where it really starts to get interesting. Because according to this article over in VoltaireNet.org, several member states of the International Coalition Against the Syrian Arab Republic, meaning Bashar al-Assad, have signaled they plan to withdraw. So this U.S. effort to oust Assad is falling apart. All right, let's take a phone call. William in Florida, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I have this idea. It's off topic to the subject that you're talking about right now, but I have this idea, and you're in a good position to possibly make it happen. For example, this Orlando shooting. Now, I live in Florida, but I don't know anybody that lives in Orlando. Surely, with this technology that we have, there must have been people that lived nearby that had been witnesses to what actually was going on over there during that period of time. Mm-hmm. And, it's kind of like a civilian intelligence network. People that live in France, they could have been, people on the site at the location where it happened that could have, contacted. I say you because you're in a good position to verify. A lot of us are sitting here, we're getting our news either from mainstream media or the internet, and I don't know how much of it is controlled,
Well, first of all, we don't call the corporate media the mainstream media anymore because we're the new mainstream out here. And yes, some of the internet news organizations are compromised. The ones with big budgets, you have to question what strings came along with that money. But we already have a system such as you described. It's kind of ad hoc. There's no organization to it. But yes, people are taking videos and photos with their cell phones. They're sending them and passing them around. And the way you find the truth is you just look at as many different sources as you can and say what makes sense. And understand that vested interests are going to be flooding both the corporate media and the independent media with as much nonsense and junk as they can to delay the formation of a consensus or conclusions. Like this nonsense about the Nice driver and ISIS.
Right, yeah. I mean, surely somebody must have been a witness to all of that over there. Again, I guess that raises the next question. How do you verify their veracity?
Like I said, you go to multiple sources. Just the way the corporate media... let me talk... Hey, William, my show.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. you do what the corporate media used to do but doesn't do anymore. You get multiple sources for what the allegations or reports are, and only then do you move forward on it. You have to have independent confirmation. But I guess you haven't really been paying attention, because there has been a lot of material that did surface from around Orlando. Logs from the first responder radios, although now those have all been grabbed by the FBI. Observant people looking at the videos of the survivors, catching them acting like they're planted actors, going the wrong way, and so forth. So there's a lot of material out there. Anyway, thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go. We're going to get on back to what's going on at the GOP convention. Apparently the whole crowd is standing up chanting, "We want Trump, we want Trump, we want Trump." And, yeah, they're making their voice known. Now, before we get into this, there's a reality that all of these dump Trump people need to understand. The latest poll is showing 88% of Republicans will support Donald Trump against Hillary Clinton. That means this dump Trump group is a minority, and we know it's bought and paid for. We know Mitt Romney's neck deep in this. If the GOP kicks out Donald Trump, they have given the White House to Hillary Clinton. They don't have anybody there who could be a challenge to her, which is, of course, exactly what Hillary Clinton wants. So, anyway. Protests outside the RNC convention, as usual, with lots and lots of professionally printed signs, and all staged for the media. Now, a federal judge last week scrapped the city of Cleveland's plans for a heightened security zone that would have encompassed most of the downtown, saying the restrictions were burdensome on people who want to express their free speech rights. Which sounds really good until you start realizing that, you know, there's the potential for a lot of violence that's coming on down there. Now, the Bikers for Trump have arrived at the Republican National Convention, and all of a sudden, the new Black Panthers and the Black Lives Matter people are getting real peaceable and calm and polite. They just quieted right on down. Somebody got an airplane and actually flew a banner, "Hillary for Prison," over the convention center. They got that on video. Now, Trump's border wall will remain on the Republicans' platform, as well it should. It's a major selling point. And then, of course, we have this report from thehill.com, which is predicting exactly what's unfolding on TV right now. Anti-Trump delegates plot convention havoc. Anti-Donald Trump delegates are hoping to stir up trouble for the RNC and wreak havoc in the Republican National Convention. This is from the Washington Post. And they're plotting a variety of ways to upend the convention, to figure out some way to get around that bound delegate first vote, get Donald Trump out, and put somebody in that Hillary Clinton can easily beat. The whole system is corrupt. It really is. Black militants plan chaos for RNC after Day of Rage protests fail. The Black Lives Matter supporters are whining that the Nice attack, the road rage, stole their thunder. How dare they be looking over there at those white people in France? They're supposed to be paying attention to us black people as we break windows and stuff. It's amazing how self-serving they can get. And there we are. Alrighty, moving on down here. Now here's where it gets really interesting. The ACLU, acknowledging that in all probability, Donald Trump is going to win in November. If he's not kicked out at this convention and if he's not assassinated, he's going to win. The poll numbers are shifting rapidly away from Hillary Clinton over her trust issues and toward Donald Trump. So the ACLU is getting ready to sue President Trump to shut down most of his policies regarding immigration. And they're coming out with this argument that forced deportations is a violation of the Fourth Amendment against unreasonable search and seizure. But the ACLU, which, by the way, I don't recall making a big stink when it was the NSA violating all of our Fourth Amendment rights with the spine. The Bill of Rights protects American citizens, which the illegal immigrants are not. Deportation of people whose presence here in this country constitutes a crime is not a violation of the Fourth or any other amendment. But it shows you how desperate they are to try and get around Donald Trump because he's not on board this globalist, blur everybody together agenda. He's not part of the inner drug money clique. And that's really what we're seeing, if you think about it. Back during Prohibition, the rum runners got enough money to buy their way into the government. And today, during the war on drugs, the drug lords are doing exactly that same thing again. And that's why you see our federal government as messed up as it is right now. Now, as I mentioned, Hillary's campaign is concerned because the polls are showing Trump is moving ahead. He now has the edge in key swing states. According to the Los Angeles Times, their poll, Trump is at 43, Clinton at 40. It's still narrow enough where vote fraud can steal it for Hillary Clinton, but we've got a long way to go to November. And more of Hillary's scandals are coming out. The active military favored Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton by 2-1 because they understand President Hillary is going to send them off to be killed and crippled in more wars of conquest, and Donald Trump wants to go back to being friends with Russia and China, do trade, peace through commerce. That's what he wants. He's come on out there. CNN is reporting Sanders supporters are saying, no way will they support Clinton. They're going to vote third party or they're going to go vote for Donald Trump because of her trust issues. That is her vulnerability. Now, we're going to take a break for some commercials. We've got a caller waiting on the line, and we will be right back after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, and we're watching the coverage coming from the GOP convention. And it is clear the vast majority of people there are all for Donald Trump. It is a tiny minority that is trying to disrupt the process to get what they want. And frankly, given the tone of the crowd that I'm hearing, they're going to be lucky to get out of that building without a good thick coat of tar and feathers if they keep this up. The will of the people is the law of the land. That is the foundation of the United States of America's system. And anybody who's in politics who doesn't want to go along with that, have the decency to resign and seek meaningful employment somewhere else. Let's grab a couple of phone calls. George in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I hope you had a good weekend, Mike.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
You know, the thing is, even I'm hearing on so-called NPR and so-called conservative local talk radio, they're saying, oh, these bikers are criminals, and they're going to make the Republican, they're going to start trouble at the Republican convention. And you know the thing is about bikers, I think you had some interactions with them. They're the most patriotic and generous people I've ever known.
Yeah, you know, you're absolutely right here. Many, many years ago, I worked on a Tom Cruise film called Losing It, and we actually contracted with some biker groups to be extras, and they were great people. They were more straight shooting than your normal citizen. And here's the reality. They're bikers on the weekends. Most of them during the week, they're dentists and lawyers and accountants. That's the reality. These are not full-time bikers. But the last report I'm getting is, yeah, they're patrolling and they're trying to keep things calmed down. But, you know, right now the political establishment is terrified of Donald Trump, and they're going to say anything they think is going to cause him harm. And even over here on Fox News, they're out there, you know, the illegal immigrants, they have a justifiable reason to be opposed to Donald Trump. The illegal immigrants aren't supposed to be part of the process. They're illegal. What part of that word are you not understanding? They are illegal. They shouldn't be there. That's the whole point. Donald Trump, he made the illegal immigrants feel unwanted. Boo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo. My heart bleeds for the people who come into this country illegally. Now, if you're here legally, I sincerely welcome you, and I hope we're not a terrible disappointment. I fear we will be.
Well, you know, Mike, the thing is, I even got like in a little trouble last week. You know, and they almost ripped me up, but I saw like my wisdom prevailed. I sat there and said, I told all the Spanish-speaking people, I said, since you both know English, you speak English in the workplace. You don't speak Spanish behind your employee's back. Because a lot of them have the habit of doing that. They'll talk Spanish. They'll go to English and they'll switch to Spanish on the job.
I don't have a problem with that. When I was working in Europe, I made an effort to learn Italian and German, and when I was working with the people at the company, I would speak as much Italian and German as I could, but when I was working with my fellow people who'd come with me from Robert Abel, we spoke English to each other. I don't really have a problem with that. Anyway, listen, Matt, got to let you go, and we'll be back with more phone calls after these few words. Hi, America. Welcome back to the show here, and we're getting word now that Black Lives Matter activist Sean King is saying if Donald Trump wins the presidency, Black Lives Matter will stage a coup. And still, we're not going to declare them a terrorist group. This is their First Amendment right to free expression to overthrow the government, just like it was our right to try and overthrow Turkey and Syria and the rest of it. All righty, let's see, back to the phone calls. Matt in Colorado, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. How's it going?
Going okay.
Yeah, so what was on my mind is that we're placing so much emphasis on Trump and Hillary, as I call her. And I'm wondering, irrespective of who gets elected, do you think that they have any ability to affect change? Because it seems to me that the powers that be that operate at a higher level put in these stooges for basically just to be talking heads to the public, but the decision-making goes on at a higher level. And so I don't understand why.
Here, if that were true, they wouldn't be trying as hard as they are to get Trump out of the race here, because Trump's an outsider. He's not part of that political establishment culture. He comes out of the world of business. He's got his own money. He can't be bought. He can't be owned. And he's already talking about significant change. And if he didn't mean it, if he was already controlled by the powers that be, then they wouldn't be going through all this nonsense trying to get him out. Because looking at what's going on at the GOP convention and what was going on during the GOP primaries is damaging to the image of the United States of America. It's sending a message to the voters that they are, in fact, no longer in control of the country. And that is a critical, critical problem. Because most Americans put up with the high taxes and the killing and crippling of their children in wars and everything else that's being done because they're under this illusion that somehow or other, through some circuitous process, they voted for this. And somehow it's what they wanted. And telling the American people what you want doesn't matter, we're just going to do what we want, brings this nation one step closer to a revolution.
Right. Well, how do you reconcile the images of Trump with both Bill and Hillary and hanging out together as a family, and they talk together? It seems to me like they're just basically two sides of the same coin, and they're creating a illusion of divisiveness to keep us busy while NATO is moving its troops into Estonia and so forth.
Well, here's the thing. When you're at that level in society, everybody meets everybody and everybody puts on a friendly face. It doesn't mean they're in alignment together. It just means business has brought them together. And Donald Trump is a very successful businessman, and he's met a lot of people. I met a lot of people when I worked in Hollywood. It doesn't mean I agreed with what they said, but we went through the polite motions here. The fact of the matter is Donald Trump is an outsider. And that is why they are so terrified of him. If Donald Trump was just another in a selection of pre-approved puppets, we wouldn't be seeing this embarrassing debacle on the floor of the GOP convention. The powers that be wouldn't care whether it's Hillary or Trump if Trump was part of their system, but he's not. That's why they're willing to risk the credibility of the Republican Party and even the credibility of our political system as a whole to try and keep him out of the White House. Okay?
All right. Well, thank you for taking my call.
Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to switch to Connie in Holland. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Connie, are you there? Okay, let's put... Yes, you're on the air. What's on your mind?
Well, I came across some speeches of James Traficant,
Yes.
And they were so similar to Trump's ideas.
Yes.
And it was very interesting to see what happened and to see how history is repeating itself. And I was wondering, wouldn't it be nice to put some of these speeches on your website, on your?
We've had them.
For people to see what's happening now is exactly what happened with him, except they got him into prison.
Yeah, they railroaded him into. I mean, they did the same thing to Dominique Strauss-Kahn, the former head of the IMF. They railroaded him in because he was starting to ask embarrassing questions about where the physical gold had all gone. And yeah, that's how these people like to play. But we've quoted from Jim on many an occasion, and yes, much of what he said has proved to be incredibly prescient over the years. But anytime you come on out with anything that is a threat to the entrenched established system, they react violently and viciously, and you know, even a senator you cannot be safe from them. And
yeah,
that's where we are right now.
But now we're a few years ahead, and things are still the same.
Well, there's one big difference. Back when Jim was getting railroaded and the American people didn't understand what was really going on. They just looked at the cover story, always corrupt, and that was the end of it. Today, the American people are dealing with this wake-up call that our political system is out of control. It is totally unresponsive to the will of the people. We are not a democracy. We don't have fair elections. We are a fascist dictatorship, and people are not happy about that. I need to take a minute here to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are rejoining our network at this time. We're talking about what's going on with Donald Trump and the GOP convention. There's apparently a huge ruckus on the floor of the convention by the anti-Trump people, even though polls are showing 88% of Republicans will support Donald Trump against Hillary Clinton. So that basically means only 12% of the Republicans are opposed to Trump, and they're trying to hijack the convention. That's not democracy in action. That's thuggism. That's tyranny. That's a dictatorship. Connie, thank you very much for the phone call.
I just wanted to comment one more thing, Mike.
Yes?
That the people in Europe that I speak to are very scared Hillary will become a president.
That's all over the world. Everybody is terrified of a Hillary presidency. It's a guaranteed, engraved invitation to World War III.
So please, let's do everything we can.
I'm working as hard as I can on this.
Make everybody aware.
I'm doing as much as I can, and that's why Hillary's people keep attacking my web server. So thank you very much for the phone call.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
All right, we're going to switch over to Jim in Texas. Jim, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, how are you doing?
Doing fine.
You know why George W. Bush was dancing during the Dallas Police's memorial?
Frankly, I didn't even really care, but go ahead and tell us.
You know why he was dancing, right? Because who would have thought the man who said, you're either with us or with the terrorists, whoever thought that still saying would still be going on today and people would still be following it? Because I remember I joined the military at 16. I went to boot camp during the split-up program in 06. And, I was a real big patriot for the Iraq War. I was like, yes, we need to go over there and get them. We need to go do it all, and people who aren't supporting us, why are they doing it, they're not, they're un-American. And then the funny thing is, you see the same thing, with both of the candidates now. Everybody like, I'm a patriot for my country. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And it's like, do you even know what it means to be a patriot and what it means to actually fight for the good of your people? Because everybody's like, send the veterans and the troops down to the border and let them take care of it like it's going to be that easy. And that's the same thing that I heard as we were going into Iraq. It'll be a cakewalk. They have no army. We can go in there and destroy them.
Well, okay. I think that's kind of going to be a little bit counterproductive here. As far as patriotism is concerned, I go along with the old sentiment that a patriot is loyal to their country and its people at all times and to the government only when it deserves it. And right now, this government does not deserve our loyalty. Jim, we're going to let you go. There's a lot of noise and ruckus on the line here, so thank you very much for the phone call, and we're going to get on back here to the news. Now then, Hillary's people are still on out there trying to claim that FBI Director Comey has cleared her of all charges in the email scandal. No, he hasn't. He simply said, we're not going to charge. But he listed all the felony violations of Title 18 Hillary Clinton has committed. And he excused his refusal to press charges by saying, we couldn't find that she intended to do wrong. But if you read Title 18, it doesn't require intent. You can commit a felony violation through negligence and carelessness, which Comey said she was. It's like if you're driving along and you're distracted by your cell phone and you run a red light and you kill a pedestrian on that crosswalk, you didn't intend to do it, but you're still probably going to go to jail. Hillary Clinton's email case is not closed. And if Donald Trump wins and Trey Gowdy is his attorney general, you can bet charges will be filed. And that's why this entire drug cartel in America that has bought its way into our government will do anything it takes to stop Donald Trump. And if they can't stop him here at the convention, I am predicting a serious attempt to assassinate him. We have a criminal government. We're going through a replay of prohibition where the illegal profits from bootleg alcohol allowed the rum runners to buy their way into the United States government. That's where the Kennedy dynasty came from. Old Joe Kennedy was a rum runner. And he made huge, huge amounts of money. And then he got his oldest son into the White House, his next oldest as Attorney General and almost to the White House until he got shot, and his youngest into a lifelong career in the Senate. And we're seeing an exact replay now during the war on drugs, where the vast amounts of profits coming from drug smuggling into this country, laundered through Panama or the HSBC or the Clinton Foundation, has allowed these people to buy their way into the U.S. government, and they are not going to let some outsider come on in and spoil the party, because they're not done plundering this nation. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. Mike, about Turkey there. That's very dangerous now that they got a hold of these bombs,
Well, we don't know. Hang on. We don't know that they've taken the bombs. Okay? Right now, Turkish prosecutors and police are inside the base, but at the moment they seem to be confining their work to examination of paperwork. They're trying to find an evidence trail of who was behind the attempted coup d'etat. And they do know that some of the NATO officers on that base were taking part in that attempted coup. So now they're building a case to take some of these people to trial. We have no indication that Erdogan has seized those nuclear weapons. But obviously with the base being completely cut off, it still has no electricity, there's a no-fly zone over it, it's certainly got to be tempting for him. But as of this moment, we do not know that he's done that, okay?
Well, I know that there's no, proof yet, but potential. Why they're there in the first place, I don't know. JFK pulled the bombs out originally during the Cuban Missile Crisis. It was part of the agreement. And then now there they are back again. Now, I'm just wondering, you say Israel might do something I'm wondering whether the U.S. wouldn't then bomb that air base, possibly, or if we wouldn't, I wonder whether Putin would decide he has to take it out then, because Russia, that would be completely unacceptable to Russia to have this crazy man have those kind of nuclear weapons right on their border.
I don't know, because right now, I mean, the reason the coup d'etat happened is because Turkey is turning away from the West and getting all buddy-buddy with Russia. And so Putin might be perfectly okay if for no other reason it allows his scientists to get their hands on one of the B-61s and reverse engineer it. So I don't think Russia is going to be a player in that situation. I think it's either if Erdogan grabs those nuclear weapons, it's my first guess would be Israel will just go ahead and bomb them the way they did the nuclear reactor at Osirak. If not, for the U.S. to conduct a first strike nuclear into Turkey in the middle of Europe would absolutely destroy what was left of their European and Middle Eastern policy. The United States would immediately be a pariah, and the political costs outweigh the gains.
So you think actually that Putin trusts Erdogan at this point, even after he shot down one of the Russian planes that time?
Well, I think what we're seeing here is that Erdogan is changing sides, and that's why the coup was staged. And I think Putin is willing.
Why do you think he would be changing sides? Since Russia is allied with Iran, and Turkey and Iran aren't exactly buddy-buddy.
Well, in the modern geopolitical world, alliances are constantly shifting. There are no hard lines here. But, Erdogan was moving to normalize relations with Russia and with China, and even tried to make friends with Israel. And by doing so, demonstrated to the U.S. government that he wasn't going along with the pre-planned agenda any longer. Anyway, listen, thank you very much for the phone call. We got to let you go because we're going to switch over here to John in Barbados. Aloha, John. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Continuing with the nonsense that's happening in Turkey, I find it rather significant that the base was reported to be back on power, but it actually isn't.
Well, I'm sure they have emergency generators there, but they can't run the entire base on those. I'm sure that command and control facilities have their own backup power. They would have to. It's a military base.
Well, yeah, I think if I was ISIS now, or any of these other attack theories previously supported by Turkey, I'd be very nervous. They may not close the border, but I think with all the things they have on their plate in Turkey, they're not going to be too willing to let people cross so easily. I think it'll slowly wind down. The other significant point is that
before you move on here, my comment to that would be, we know that Erdogan is making a huge amount of money for himself personally with the oil that ISIS is stealing from Syria, and he's not going to want that to stop anytime soon. The real fly in the ointment, though, as I mentioned before, is that several members of this U.S. coalition against Assad are signaling their intention to withdraw. And if that U.S. coalition and the support to the moderate rebels collapses, well, then at that point, I would expect Bashar al-Assad is going to shut down that border with Turkey.
Well, I think the Russian Air Force have already depleted those trucks going across the border with the stolen oil, but that's another story. What I find interesting is that the Syrian Arab Army have closed off Aleppo now. It's completely sealed off from Turkey. And there's only one small area, one small province of that Aleppo area that is still in the hands of the Takfiris, the ISIS and what have you.
Well, if Erdogan clearly suspects the U.S. was behind the attempted coup d'etat, and that means his willingness to go along with this nonsense in Syria may be about to come to an end.
Yeah, I think you probably hit the nail on the head there, that it's going to come to an end quite rapidly, particularly now as we've heard from Muqtada al-Sadr that if the U.S. sends another 500 troops to Iraq, they will be targets.
Yeah, and of course, most of those people fighting against Assad are actually hired mercenaries. They can just vanish and go back to their home country. So I think they'll do that before they allow themselves to be captured. Although, obviously, in the case of Aleppo, if they don't have an airfield to use, then they really are kind of stuck. But if they're expecting the United States to come on in and rescue them, they're in for a hideous disappointment because the U.S. will just write them off and pretend they don't know them.
I think it's also rather interesting that Mr. Kerry is shuttling between Moscow and Turkey, and we don't know yet what's being said and what's being discussed, but apparently Mr. Kerry now is cozying up to Vladimir.
Well, he may have to. He may have no choice. Obviously, Russia has been gaining great grounds in the Middle East in terms of geopolitical influence, and I think Kerry's agenda is to find some way to make the U.S. the go-through point for all the Middle Eastern geopolitical communications, but that, too, is starting to fall apart. John, got to let you go here. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, and we're looking at a couple of breaking stories. First of all, the attempt to derail the convention apparently did fail. And again, the dump Trump contingent is a tiny, tiny minority, 12% if the polls are to be believed. And now, of course, there's a counter-protest against them saying, you need to get out. If you're not here to support the people's choice, you need to get out. And I think the sooner they do get out, the more likely they are to walk out of there without a good thick coat of tar and feathers, which they richly deserve. Now, getting on back to the situation in Turkey, Erdogan has now basically declared that the alliance with the United States is over unless they return that cleric, Gulen. And that puts the U.S. in a real corner because we know Gulen is linked in with the CIA, not to mention the Clintons. And the only way they're going to get out of this mess is for this guy to suffer a sudden heart attack or a stroke and die where he is. Now then, getting on back to Hillary Clinton, Loretta Lynch is now out there trying to push the idea that although it appears Hillary Clinton lied to Congress under oath, it may not actually be a crime. We're not sure, and therefore we're not going to do anything about it. And considering that this lady is supposedly the Attorney General, the top law enforcement officer in the entire country, it's clear she doesn't know the law. Because, yes, it is illegal to lie under oath. It's called perjury. And it applies not only in courtroom trials, but testifying before Congress, and it's a felony. And you can face up to 5 years in prison plus fines. When you have a criminal government, the criminals look out for each other and to heck with the rest of the country. That's their attitude here. Now, along with all of the possible exposure of national secrets to foreign interests, the latest email tranche, if you will, has exposed a global insider trading connection. Now, remember when Martha Stewart was jailed for insider trading? Well, looks like Hillary was doing exactly the same thing. But she's above the law. The Clintons are above the law. Don't you understand the modern United States of America? We're a dictatorship, and the dictators are never held to account. Now, Hillary's campaign is thrashing around. Her trust issues are ganging up on her. The polls are swinging away from her. And they're starting to go back and replay old propaganda. Oh, they just hate Hillary. She didn't do anything wrong. It's just, for some reason, they hate her. They hate her because she's a woman. They hate this. And so this article came out of the Daily Dot. Why does the Internet hate Hillary Clinton? And so now they're trying to say, the opposition to Hillary, it's just a bunch of those bloggers, sitting in their parents' basement in their underwear, drinking Red Bull and typing away at all hours of the night. Well, that's not exactly accurate. I don't sit in my underwear. I don't have a basement, and my parents are dead. And I don't drink Red Bull, not at my age. And it's just a big, whiny PR piece about pay no attention to Hillary's opponents. They only hate her. Next, they'll bring back the vast right-wing conspiracy. The reason the Internet has become the focus of opposition to Hillary Clinton is very, very simple. The Internet, the independent media, unlike the corporate media, are telling the truth about what's been going on. Now, speaking of the corporate media, Roger Ailes, CEO of Fox News, is either going to be fired or forced to resign. Apparently, he's had a huge sex scandal blow up in his face, and a lot of people didn't like him anyway, and this is just an opportunity to get rid of him. Now, CBS affiliate WOWK-TV reports that Michael Folk, a Republican legislator down in the West Virginia House of Delegates, is saying Hillary Clinton should be hung on the National Mall. a growing sentiment, I might add. And he's not on the internet, is he? We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And we're starting to get some of these details regarding the attempt at the GOP convention to retroactively force through a rules change. Remember, they tried to get the Rules Committee to go along with this vote your conscience to unbind the delegates. And the Rules Committee didn't do that. And so they tried to demand a vote of all the delegates on this rule change, which is against the Republican Committee's own rules. But that was what the ruckus. And again, I want to make a point. Those delegates are not voting as private citizens where they can exercise their conscience. They are there as representatives of the will of the voters of their state. And they are not supposed to allow their personal biases to interfere with that, or they shouldn't be delegates in the first place. Now, we need to be very, very cautious about the issue of vote fraud, because there does seem to be a great concern. And complicating that is apparently federal election observers will only be allowed in 5 states this November. This is one of the smallest deployments of federal election observers since the Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965. Nobody's going to be keeping an eye on what's going on. So, let's see. And get that going. All right. Bernie Sanders has a book deal now that he's officially out of the race. And his Secret Service protection is gone, and he's inked a book deal where he's going to basically write his memoirs of the campaign. And I hope he comes on out and just says, yeah, there was massive election fraud. Because Americans need to understand, U.S. elections are so crooked they have to screw those ballots into the ballot boxes. And it's a national disgrace. Now, getting on back to the White House petition website, where you can put up a petition, and when they first set it up, you had to have 25,000 signatures, at which point the White House promised a response. Then, because so many petitions were getting past that 25,000, they upped it to 100,000, and they're still getting above that threshold. So there was a petition put up to label Black Lives Matter a terror group. And remember, earlier in the show, we were reporting on how one of their leaders is saying if Donald Trump wins the presidency, Black Lives Matter will stage a coup d'etat. So the petition to label Black Lives Matter soared above 100,000 signatures, and the official White House response was, well, we don't actually maintain a list of domestic terror organizations, therefore we can't put them on. And that's complete and utter nonsense. We found a report on CNN saying, yes, the United States keeps lists of domestic terror organizations and dissenters. So the White House is just lying to us again. Lie, 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 lie. You lie like a rug. Now, getting on over to the war zones. Poroshenko has a major problem on his hands, and that's massive desertion from his army. The Ukrainian soldiers are really not very hot on the idea of killing fellow Ukrainians over in those eastern Ukrainian republics. And the ranks of the Ukrainian army are being filled more and more with mercenaries. And some of the deserters from the Ukrainian forces are revealing there is a NATO plan for a massive offensive against Lugansk. Because once you're enslaved to the American empire, you're going to come on back here. Story coming out of therealnews.com. NATO border confrontation with Russia risks nuclear war and loss of European partners. Because those people in Europe are finally starting to realize this is a very real deal. This isn't politics or abstraction or just tossing around ideas at a political cocktail party. They're really getting ready for a war. And for people in Europe, they live their lives amid the signs of the first 2 world wars. It's a very real thing for them. Here in the United States, we haven't had a war on our soil since the Civil War. And except for a few well-preserved battlefields and monuments, we don't see the traces of it anymore. In Europe, it's very, very different. And they're starting to pull out of this whole thing. Just like that other report, they're pulling out of the U.S. coalition against Syria. They've had enough of the suffering that goes with supporting U.S. economic and military policies. And by the way, responding to that earlier call asking why all of these B-61 gravity bombs, nuclear weapons, are at that base in Turkey, that's because the United States has been forward deploying these nuclear bombs all over Europe, and it's making people very, very nervous to have those bombs nearby. Now, Ukraine and the U.S. are starting a new exercise in the Black Sea called Exercise Sea Breeze, getting ready to just teach those Ruskies what for here. Meanwhile, over in Germany, a member of their parliament, Sarah Wagenknecht, is out there saying exactly what everybody else is thinking. Russia is not the threat to the peace of Europe. It's the United States. And she went on further to say the United States of America is not following its own promises or treaties. Big shock there. I know most of you are not going to be able to deal with that one for a while. The Americans are placing nuclear weapons in Germany, supposedly to counter Putin's aggression in the Baltics, remembering that Putin hasn't been acting aggressively in the Baltics. The people of Crimea voted to secede from Ukraine, which is their right under the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They then held a second referendum to say, let's merge with Russia. And then they asked Russia, can we be part of you? And Putin said, yes, you can. That's how it happened. There wasn't an aggression. It's just that constant smear. Tell a lie often enough and loud enough, and eventually everybody will believe it. Except that doesn't work anymore in the age of the Internet. And that's another reason they're so unhappy with us out there. U.S. warships have now surrounded those disputed Chinese islands, literally preparing for war. Now, the Hague decision, which China is rejecting, simply said that China's sole claim to the islands is null and void, and it ruled in favor of the Philippines. It did not say those islands are territories of the United States of America. The United States doesn't have any business there. And China is out there saying that the United States needs to be careful with what the U.S. is calling freedom of navigation patrols because of the potential of triggering a major sea battle out there. And obviously, war in the Pacific is not an idea I'm very much in favor of because I'm living out here on this rock in the Pacific, and I can look out that window right over there at a first strike nuclear target. All right, let's see. Now, getting on back to the road rage in Nice, and again, French investigators are saying there are no links between this truck driver and ISIS, and they're trying to counter this huge attempt to rewrite history in the corporate media. Oh, he's ISIS, he's this, he's that. No, he's not. It's a road rage. It's what happened. And apparently a lot of people are very angry because when this road rage incident happened, the first thing the police did was evacuate celebrities who were at a restaurant a half mile away. Then they went back to take care of everybody else on the ground. Okay, I love this one. John Kerry's out there saying the recent spate of terror attacks proves ISIS is on the run. And I can imagine General Robert E. Lee saying much the same thing about the Yankees right up to Appomattox. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Wes in Idaho, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I've got absolute, irrefutable proof that global warming is a fraud. Evidence that anyone out there should be able to access. What it is my Vista Power bill. It's an electric company here in the Northwest. They tell me what the average temperature was last year, the same month. And last year, the average temperature was 75 degrees. And this year, the very same month, it was 64 degrees. Virtually every single month, it tells me the same thing. In February, last year, the average temperature was 37 degrees. This year, 2016, the average temperature was 34 degrees and went down 3-degree average. There's only a very few that the average temperature, here's a bill from March, where the average temperature in the month of March was 1 degree higher this year than last year. The other thing I want to point direction to is a book by Charles Weissman called America, Free, White, and Christian, the foundation and principle of American law history that legally established America as a free, white, and Christian nation.
Well, hold on. I agree with you on the first part. Second part, again, the door is open to anybody around the world who wants to come into the United States through the legal process. I don't have a problem with legal immigrants at all. My only concern is they may get here and discover that we're not the great place the propaganda says we are. But that's their problem to deal with here. So I don't want to get into this Christian white nation. First of all, because that First Amendment says there is no official U.S. religion. All religions are treated equal, so no religion has supremacy over any other. That's a very unconstitutional comment. Now, getting on back to the global warming, they're having early snow start to hit in Europe. It's wrecking tomato crops, and they're losing crops because the cold is just coming that much sooner. So you're absolutely right about that. We're going into a mini ice age. And, it's absurd for anybody to still talk about human-caused global warming. If humans are warming the planet, then let's get out and do more of it. Let's put more CO2 out there. Let's all buy SUVs and save the planet from the coming ice age. All right, Wes, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Michael in Texas. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, not much. Hope you had a good weekend, Mike. But I spoke to you on Friday, a little bit after all the whole news broke about the whole coup that was going on in Turkey. And I was suggesting about the U.S. possibly being behind it and whatnot. So I just kind of wanted, now that we got a little more information, kind of wanted to expound on that a little bit. And I just think now with how Erdogan was starting to show a little more overtures with Russia and stuff like that, and just want to also point out to people, just because Erdogan came out with the apology for the public consumption doesn't mean behind closed doors there wasn't discussions already going on with the Russian government. Because as far as Putin needs to please people back at home, he needed the public apology. So we all know that, I'm kind of rambling, but I'm getting to a point. But just want to point out that the United States has spies, and we know because of the Snowden situation, they're spying on all the government leaders. So maybe there's something they didn't like. Maybe Erdogan saw, the lie, maybe working more friendly ties with Russia. The United States knows they need that sea base right there to plant all the boats for that coming war with Russia. So I just think maybe that might be another thing that kind of the reason for this attempted coup. And another thing I don't think we also haven't talked about is how many of the George Soros groups are working around in that whole in Turkey as well. Because if they attempted soft coup with the military, doesn't mean they can't come back. If it was the United States, they couldn't come back and pull the whole George Soros out with all these NGOs and whatnot. So that's usually the one that always succeeds as far as like Ukraine and the attempt in Iran and whatnot.
Well, that's one of the reasons why it appears this attempted coup, if it was by the U.S. and the CIA, it was a rush job. Because normally they'll send in these non-governmental organizations to create civil discord. And they didn't have time enough to do that. So this was a straight cowboy shot at Erdogan himself. And I think what we're going to be seeing all over Europe and all over the Mideast is people are all of a sudden waking up and realizing all this talk about World War III isn't a fantasy. They're really planning to do it, and everybody's getting cold feet and saying, no, we don't want to do this. Wes, we got a really bad phone connection here, so I'm going to let you... I'm sorry, this is Michael in Texas. We got a really bad phone connection, so I'm going to let you go. Thank you very much for the phone call. And we're going to get on back here to the news here. Over in Iraq, things may be heating up there. Muqtada al-Sadr, who's been leading a protest movement calling for major reforms within that U.S.-imposed junta, is now instructing his followers that U.S. ground troops inside Iraq are now a target. This is a major, major escalation. Al-Sadr is now basically saying it's time to start targeting these U.S. troops because, like the Roman legionnaires, they are there to make sure the subjugated population goes along with their foreign rulers. And we could see Iraq collapse into chaos as well because Al-Sadr has a lot of followers here. Down in Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu and his son are being investigated for using false passports and money laundering through that Panama account. Remember the Fonseca Monseco law firm in Panama that everybody was going through that didn't have access to the Clinton Foundation and HSBC? So he's in hot water over that, and observers are saying this might be the beginning of the end of Netanyahu's seeming iron lock on the rulership of Israel. Meanwhile, the government of Israel has mounted a new public relations campaign to try and reverse boycott, divestment, and sanctions by trying to publicly shame human rights groups for being in favor of human rights, which doesn't sound to me like it's going to be a really good idea, but that seems to be what they're down to. Shame on you for arguing for human rights. You obviously don't recognize our inherent supremacy. Blah, 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 blah. Over in Kashmir, they're dealing with some of their most violent protests. The whole world is rushing towards a global revolution because of this global push for a one-world government and a one-world private central bank to hold us all as slaves until the sun swells up and swallows the planet. Now, turning to the economy, Australia has now offered Great Britain a free trade deal following the Brexit. And that's a good thing. And it basically puts an end to all that fear-mongering that post-Brexit Britain would be economically isolated. No, they're already making deals. And the lowered pound makes British exports more attractive to other countries than EU exports. All right, we got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, and we're going to go ahead and take a phone call. Tom in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, good day, Michael. Michael, I was just watching this thing that's going on, this convention in Cleveland, and I've seen a lot of these anti-Trump protesters screaming in Spanish. Since when is that? These people are going, no good Trump and all. What's going on here? And you got this Juan Williams for Fox News. All these creatures in the news media like, it's a disaster. I mean, Michael, we got people, these Spanish people, they don't even speak the English language, and they're over here protesting Donald Trump.
Well,
not even doing it in the English language.
Again, the absurd thing is most of these people are illegal immigrants, or they're in support of the illegal immigrants. They're out there very unhappy that Donald Trump might actually enforce the immigration laws of this country. And what they want is they want an open border where they can come up here and get on our social services and just have a fine old time. And it literally is a mob trying to yell its way to other people's money and property. And it is absurd. And, they're still out there screaming, well, anybody who refuses to open the borders is just being racist. No. I have a lock on my front door. Doesn't mean I'm racist against my neighbors. It means I love my wife and myself. And
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. But, I just watched Janet Brewer just now. She was talking about, we need a president's going to have some, like he's talking, law and order. This old Slama doesn't have law and order. Hillary's another 4-year extension of this guy, or Hillary Blythe Clinton, whatever you want to call her. But, Michael, this is absurd because I was just talking to my brother, and he lives up in northern Florida, and they're literally flooding this place with Mexicans that came in from Mexico, all these kids. I mean, he was over here. I'm not going to even mention the city, but it's northern Florida, and they're literally bringing thousands of kids who do not speak English into these cities of northern Florida, which is kind of a rural area. Before they hardly had, maybe 2,000 to 3,000 people in a couple of these towns. Now they're flooding them. They're flooding them with these kids.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem. Okay, the taxpayers are picking up the tab to take care of these kids, and as they grow up, there are no jobs for them to have. That's the problem. We already have 90 million Americans who are legal citizens who have a right to be here. They cannot find work for months and years, and now we're flooding in all these illegals and these refugees into a place where none of them can actually find a job. What do you think they're going to be doing for a living? And
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
And can I name the city I want to talk about? Can I name the city on your radio station?
Sure.
Okay, the city of Ocala, Florida, where my brother's at, north of there. Okay, there's 62%. It was in their paper, the banner. 62% of the people in Ocala do not have jobs. Michael?
Yes.
62%. My brother can't find no work unless you work in the Winn-Dixie, and you got to be a part-timer. It's unbelievable what you're saying. And they're bringing in these people from Africa, from Central America. None of these people have jobs.
This is part of that New World Order plan to blur all the ethnic groups together into one formless mass of humanity with no strong sense of an identity in order to make it easier to control them. And it is failing miserably, like most other liberal agendas, because it's based on an intellectual fraud. Got to let you go here, Tom. Take a break for station identification. We'll be back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And getting on back to the news, the European Union is now facing yet another referendum. The people of Ireland are demanding a vote on that transatlantic trade and investment partnership agreement. This is clearly a giveaway to the corporatocracy. People are digging their heels in. The Irish want a referendum on that. Now, as you know, Italy's banks are in serious, serious trouble. And Italy has now asked J.P. Morgan to create a 50 billion, with a B, euro bank bailout to keep them going. That's where we are with all this Ponzi scheme, private central banking. The debt has grown to the point of bringing the system down, so they're just going to start creating new money out of thin air and pouring it all over the bankers. It's helicopter money time. And it's not going to solve the problem because it doesn't address the structural flaw in private central banking. Yet another money laundering scandal, this one involving UBS and other banks. Singapore is launching a money laundering investigation regarding the 1MDB scandal. This is a $4.2 billion scandal. $4.2 billion went missing and ended up in overseas accounts whose owners couldn't be determined. Gee, have they checked the Clinton Foundation lately on that one? Over at Alhambra, Jeff Snyder is saying, how long can buybacks continue to support a market which is standing on a fundamentally flawed premise? Everybody is beginning to understand what's wrong with the economy can't be fixed with more instant money. It's that 11th marble problem all over again, because when they create new instant money, it creates new instant debt to go with it, which starts accruing interest. Another article on the same theme from of2minds.com. The problem with helicopter money is it cannot fix what's broken in the economy, and even worse, it perpetuates every inefficient, corrupt, bloated, and unsustainable system in the status quo. And it's all at your expense, because when the Federal Reserve or the ECB or the IMF crank up those printing presses, or they type new zeros into their computer terminals, it steals real purchasing power and value from the money you already worked for, have in your pocket, have in the bank, have buried in a mayonnaise jar out by that pineapple plantation. It's like Lord Voldemort is sitting there at the top of the banks and he waves his wand, and all of a sudden your purchasing power vanishes from your pocket and appears in the pockets of the private central banks. And until somebody is willing to have the gonadal tissue to stand up the way Andrew Jackson did and say, this system is not working, it is not workable, it does not serve the nation, it does not serve the people, it serves itself, it's not going to get fixed. Because private central banking is designed to create more debt than money, with the ultimate aim of control of the people, control of the nation, control of the government, and the eventual transfer of all the real assets from those whose labor created those assets into the pockets of the bankers, to then be rented back to us at monthly payments here. Los Angeles currently has 46,874 people. They're looking at projections. It could grow to be 250,000. So, of course, let's flood Los Angeles with more illegal immigrants and refugees here. It'll work itself out somehow. Apparently, 12 Israelis were arrested by the FBI and sentenced for conning and bilking elderly victims out of their life savings. Avi Ayash and Yaron Bar, 2 leaders of an Israeli lottery fraud ring, received 13 and 12 years in prison, respectively, on mail and wire fraud charges. All 12 members of the ring have pled guilty, the rest remaining for their sentence. Qualifiers would call the victims and falsely tell them they'd won a substantial cash prize and then ask them about their assets, and told the victims that in order to obtain the prize, they had to pay several $1,000s in fees and taxes. And, yeah, they're picking on old people. I mean, that's scummy as it gets. Okay. Nigel Farage is out there claiming that the refugee crisis is so bad. There are now parts of France and Brussels that are virtually lawless, and they have become very dangerous for women. You know, the Swedish police put out those little bands, don't touch me. The refugee molesters are collecting those like trophies. They got them like all the way up the arm. One for each girl they groped, and then they stole her little wristband. Over in Germany, judges are now saying that if you criticize migrants, you will go to jail immediately. You will not talk about the migrants. Sieg Heil, Sieg Heil, Sieg Heil, Sieg Heil. Japan is getting ready to repeal free speech in their constitution. The First Amendment is in danger in this country, and free speech is in danger all over the world. Time to do a little shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just rejoining our network. We're talking about current events at the moment. We're talking about the damage the refugee crisis in Europe is causing. And so we're looking at this article from Zero Hedge. Surging intercommunity confrontations, meaning confrontations between the people who live in Europe and those being shoveled in there, means civil war is now inevitable. This is coming from the head of France's Homeland Security, the DGSI, Patrick Calver. He's saying that this refugee program is bringing France to a civil war. And he's absolutely right. Meanwhile, the Obama administration has released tens of thousands of criminal illegal aliens into our midst because their home countries refuse to take them back. Isn't that wonderful? And we're not supposed to have firearms to defend ourselves from the resulting surge of crime because these are criminals. These are criminals. And Obama's just dumped them onto the streets. Now, I want to make a point here. This idea of keeping America for Americans is not racist. If you think about it, this nation was built by Americans of all colors, genders, orientations, and creeds. We made it. The government likes to take credit for it. But we, the American people, we built this. And we should have a say who it goes to. And who we want it to go to is the next generation of Americans. And instead we have a government that wants to take the country we all built, generation after generation after generation after generation, and just give it away to a bunch of foreigners in exchange for votes in November. Talk about a massive, massive sellout. Now, I'm not fortunate enough to have children myself. I'm a great uncle, though. But I want America to be kept intact, preserved, and safe for the next generation of Americans. Anybody tell me what's wrong with that? And again, if anybody around the world wants to come to this country through the legal immigration process, welcome. Come on in, be part of our society, adapt to our culture and language, the way President Theodore Roosevelt said you are obligated to do. And I hope we're not a disappointment. When you go to somebody else's country, common courtesy says you adapt to their ways. You learn their language. When I was working in Europe, I made a sincere effort to learn German and Italian. And in between the chuckling, though, there was a lot of respect that I made the effort. And that's the way it's supposed to work. I didn't walk into these places in Germany and Italy and say, I demand you speak English, because I'm an American and America rules the world. That would have gotten a very hostile reaction. Okay, it's time for us to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining us. We're talking about the immigration problem and its backlash, and actually I think I already did the rejoin message. I got to clear my little board down here. There are so many things I got to look at. Too many buttons, too many dials. I'm overwhelmed here right now. Now, Barack Obama actually did come on out, and he made a statement which, amazingly enough, I agree with. Obama came on out and said police can make the job of being a cop a lot safer by admitting their failures. And he's absolutely right, because when a cop behaves badly and they're held up to public humiliation, it deters other police officers from behaving the same way. When you have a system where the police go on out and they abuse somebody or they kill somebody and the system protects them, then other police get the message it's okay for them to do exactly the same thing. The police have to be subservient to the general American population. We have a right to point to the police and say, look, you're working on our tax dollars. You have to play by the rules. Which gets us over here to these three Los Angeles County deputies who decided, just for giggles, they were going to pepper spray an inmate's private parts. And they got sued. The final settlement is $450,000. And here is the part that was really smart. These three deputies are being held personally, financially liable for that $450,000. They're not going to stick the taxpayers with it. That will send a message to other deputies about how they should be behaving. We need to get the police back to this mindset that they are there to serve the public, not treat us like a king, as in Rodney King. Interesting little article over in the Activist Post. As you know, we're coming up on the 15th anniversary of the 9/11 false flag. And so this article is talking about 15 years of fighting for 9/11 truth. Whew, has it really been that long? And I remember when Claire and I went to New York for the 10th anniversary, which was a bit of a treat because how often does a truth activist get to perform off-Broadway? But it is. It's been 15 years. For me, it's been longer. It began with Vince Foster, and that was 20 more years ago. So long I've forgotten. But we need to always hold the government to account for its known lies. Now, we put up this video rebuttal of the CIA video about TWA 800. Now, remember, the official story was that all those people who thought they saw a missile rise up from the surface of the ocean and kill that 747, what they actually saw was the 747 itself after it lost its nose from the center fuel tank explosion, pitching up and climbing 3,000 feet, trailing burning fuel, and that just looked like a missile. And the CIA came out with two different videos claiming they were simulations showing how this could work. And here's where it got kind of interesting. The CIA, while claiming it was a simulation, refused to release the raw data the simulation was supposed to be based on, which means it was just an animation to push the government story. Boeing actually went so far as to issue a statement they had not been consulted on the simulation and did not know where the CIA got their data. Now, the difference between an animation and a simulation is vital to understand. In a simulation, you have a computer model which accepts various data parameters and will mimic a realistic outcome. Sometimes it gets fudged with, like we saw with the global warming data, but that's what a simulation is supposed to be. An animation is you take a model and you make it do whatever you want it to do, and that's what it appears the CIA did. And finally, I went ahead and posted a flashback to one of my articles about TWA 800 called The Magic Wing Box. And that name is an homage to the magic bullet from the JFK assassination. Because, as it turns out, the official story contradicts itself. Because the official record of the investigation shows that whatever happened to the center of TWA 800, which the government is claiming is a center fuel tank explosion, and witnesses are saying is a missile, it shattered what are called the span-wise beams that go through that center fuel tank. Those span-wise beams, there are three major ones, are what hold the wings in place. And the NTSB data confirms pieces of those span-wise beams were found at the very start of the debris field. And what that means is from the moment that incident happened, the wings failed. And yet the official story is that somehow, by magic, the wings glued themselves back onto the 747 and it zoom climbed 3,000 feet. And that's why all those drunk people on Long Island thought they saw a missile. And by the way, the TWA investigators actually said that. Ignore all the eyewitnesses on Long Island. Those people are all drunks. But the story contradicts itself. And it's not like the U.S. Navy hasn't shot down passenger jets by accident before. If you remember the USS Vincent and that Iranian Airbus. It does happen. The United Nations acknowledges there have been at least 25 incidents where civilian passenger jets are shot down by military mistake. Most of them still remain classified. They're blamed on suicidal pilots and terrorists and the rest of it. But there are ones that are known to have been accidental shoot-downs, like the Iranian Airbus. Now, as I mentioned before, following the shoot-down of Malaysian Airlines 17, which I think was a botched attempt to shoot down Vladimir Putin's presidential jet, which was in the same area and painted the same colors as Malaysian Airlines 17. Following that, the corporate media in the Western world just came on out with this pounding, Russia did it, Russia did it, Russia did it. Russia was convicted by propaganda, not by the evidence. The final report from the independent international investigation basically came out and said, we found nothing to indicate who did it. But the propaganda is still out there, and that's why you should never listen to anything the corporate media or a government spokesslug says and take it at face value. Double check it for yourself. Nobody is going to give you the truth for free. They're going to be giving you what their corporate owners and government controllers want you to think. Knowing the truth takes hard work. You have to go on out and find it for yourself. And double check, verify, find multiple sources. Only then will you really be confident you know what's going on. Sitting in front of the TV and letting it tell you what to think, and then thinking you know what's going on is one of the biggest lies in our society. That's the illusion of the TV news. It's an illusion that you're fully informed. It's an illusion that you know what's actually going on. It's an illusion that you know the truth about anything. Because the corporate media's job is to control your mind and deliver you up as a willing, obedient servant to the powers that be here. More and more people are looking at that 28-page declassified excerpt from the 9/11 report, which is heavily redacted, and they're basically all saying the same thing. It's another attempt at a smear job. It's guilt by innuendo. Hijackers may have known somebody from Saudi Arabia. Could have been, might have been. Nothing substantive. Not one piece of courtroom-worthy evidence that Saudi Arabia had anything to do with 9/11. And remember, we pointed out, Saudi Arabia doesn't have a motive. They've been making tons of money from the petrodollar deal. They're not going to kill that golden goose. And if Saudi Arabia really wanted to hurt the United States of America, they don't need to crash planes into buildings to do it. All they have to do is ask for all their money back that they've loaned to the U.S., invested in our businesses. They pull that all back, whole economic system would come down. Now, I want to talk about a documentary that's come on out, and this is kind of a mixed review. It's called 0 Days. And Claire and I caught this on cable TV last night. And its primary purpose was to tell the history of the discovery of the Stuxnet computer virus, computer weapon, cyber weapon, how it got tracked back to its authors. The documentary, though, has a very pro-Israel, anti-Iran slant into it, which we're going to talk about when we come back from these words from our sponsors. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And we're talking about this documentary that's out. It's on cable. It's on pay-per-view. And it's called 0 Days. And it's about the Stuxnet virus and how it was discovered and tracked back to its creators, and goes into detail about how it was engineered to destroy the centrifuges in Iran's Natanz facility where they were making fuel rods. Now, there is a negative part of this review, and that is that Alex Gibney made this documentary with a very pro-Israel, anti-Iran slant, basically accepting it as a fact that Iran wanted to build a nuclear bomb, even though nobody in the IAEA found any indications Iran was planning that. Iran has nuclear power, and under the terms of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, they have a right to make their own fuel rods. And that's all anybody found any evidence of doing. And so by extension, Gibney is out there saying that it was okay for Israel to do what they did because of the Iranian nuclear threat. And the bias continues to be obvious. They talk briefly about Dimona without mentioning Israel's bomb factory underneath that. And the documentary does say that the enrichment taking place in Iran was only to the level needed for nuclear reactor fuel rods. Now, setting that obvious bias and agenda aside, it is a very good telling of how Stuxnet was discovered and tracked down by security experts. And they got a lot of insiders to go public. And even though no government on earth officially acknowledges having anything to do with Stuxnet, they did track it back to NSA, GCHQ, and Israel. And I don't want to give the whole story away. It goes into detail on exactly how Stuxnet was able to operate autonomously without being connected to any kind of a central controller. Stuxnet is 20 times larger than any other known virus out there in cyberspace. And the reason it was discovered at all, there were apparently earlier versions of Stuxnet that went all around the world without being detected. And then Israel decided Stuxnet wasn't being aggressive enough, and they tinkered with the code and redeployed it. And it was so aggressive, it got into places that it didn't really belong, places that didn't have nuclear enrichment centrifuges, and started causing damage to systems other than nuclear reactors. And that's when it got caught. And the documentary goes on to talk about how there's a whole new world of cyber weapons out there. They are potentially as dangerous as nuclear weapons, because when you have viruses like Stuxnet that start interfering with real-world systems of control, people can get hurt. People can get killed. It can melt down a reactor. We know Stuxnet was in computers all around the Fukushima power plant at the time of the quake and tsunami. And we also know that a lot of their emergency safety systems that used the same Siemens controllers Stuxnet was designed to infect and disrupt failed to operate correctly during the disaster. And so what we have here is an image of these cyber warriors making war, making the internet a battle zone, as NATO declared it is, and not caring what damage they cause to anybody else. It's like starting a war in the middle of your town and ordering everybody to leave their front doors unlocked and open. Now then, by Microsoft's own metrics, Windows 10 is a failure. They were projecting 1 billion devices by mid-2018. It's not going to happen. People are sticking with older operating systems. They're hanging onto their older computers longer because they don't want to go to Windows 10. And Microsoft's model of subscription-based software and operating system is not sitting well with people during these hard economic times. If they'd wanted to go this way, they should have done it back when the economy was still healthy, and people would have just shrugged their shoulders and said, yeah, I can handle this. Today, not so much. Bad timing. Classic bad timing. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Now, we're getting a breaking story. This is coming from Germany. Apparently, this 17-year-old Afghan refugee attacked a train station, actually stormed a train with an axe and started hacking at people. More than 20 injured. Just out there with the axe, just hitting at anybody he could find. And I can see the gun grabbers out there already saying, ban axes! We need a 15-day waiting period for garden tools. And I'm saying that tongue-in-cheek, but this is a huge embarrassment for the gun grabbers who are out there saying, if you give up your guns, all will be peace. There'll be no more violence and no more mass attacks of any kind. By the way, how did they stop this guy? With a gun. All right, let's grab a phone call. James in Japan. Ohio gozaimasu. What's on your mind today?
Lost him.
Lost him. Okay, well. Oh, my goodness. Maybe China and the U.S. have started the war over there. So that's a bit of an embarrassment for the gun grabbers out there. Now, getting on back to the world of computers, apparently British Airways computer check-in has broken down for the 4th time in a month. Everybody is unhappy. They're talking about a summer of chaos. Doesn't anybody test these things out before they're deployed? They certainly didn't in the case of the Obamacare website, did they? And what's going on here is we have allowed computer science to become very decadent, convoluted. All these different little systems from everybody wanting to get a little piece of the action and IT and different standards, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And it's resulted in a complex system. Nobody can really manage or maintain or repair anymore. Certainly underneath corporations that are cutting their budgets in these hard economic times. And we look at this computer check-in system breaking down 4 times in a month. We all remember the Obamacare website, how much that cost and how badly that was done. Whatever happened to testing systems before they go out the door? Whatever happened to the wisdom that simple is better? One of the reasons people are turning away from Windows 10 is it's another jump in complexity and convolution. And every time you do that, it opens up more vulnerabilities for the cyber criminals. To the point now where even industry experts are saying most antivirus software won't work anymore. There are simply too many openings and vulnerabilities and exploits that are out there. Now, if computers are a public utility, and certainly the public is dependent on them, then it is time to reimpose standards so that everybody is working on the same code, the same languages, the same standards, and we don't have all this confusion out there. Now, I don't know how this British Airways computer system was created. I do remember how they created the Obamacare website. They went out and bought chunks of software from other companies and tried to glue them together because it was a rush job. And for the amount of money they were paid, they could have written it from the ground up, but we're into profits here. All righty, let's see. Mateus in Canada, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael, just a quick on-topic comment about computers. I've been running the Windows 7 on a home PC for about 3.5 years, and it comes with the Service Pack 1. But what I do is I never allow it to update anything other than the Service Pack 1 that it came with. And I'm able to use my machine flawlessly for maybe 6 months at a time, and then it starts to get a little bit slow. I don't even try to figure out what's going on. I just do a system restore to a disk image that I saved. And so I haven't allowed Windows to update anything ever on this machine, and I aggressively use this computer for everything.
Okay, well, listen, the reason for the slowdown may not require that kind of a drastic situation. Virtually all the Windows operating systems have a problem with accumulating junk temp files, memory dumps, and all the rest of it, which can slow it down. And you may want to look at a tool called CCleaner, which is available for free, and it will basically go and do a complete scrub out of non-essential stuff that is slowing your machine down. Because Windows does not have an efficient garbage collection management system built in, because it evolved from this little tiny home computer operating system back in the days when you were running maybe 1 or 2 apps at a time, and they've never really caught up to what is required to keep their operating systems running for a long, long period of time. And of course, this is a boon for computer repair companies, because people will go in and say, my computer is slow, and they'll go in and clean out the junk. And the other thing that you need to look for is, assuming you can find ones that work, antivirus and anti-malware and anti-spyware tools, because if you are infected by spyware or malware or just advertising where they take up systems resources, and that'll really bog you down. So along with CCleaner, you might want to look at something called Spybot Search and Destroy, which is a very good tool. Malwarebytes Anti-Malware, there's a free version and there's a commercial version. And if you have not already done so, you probably ought to invest the money in at least one high-end, top-level product. And you need to go out and read the consumer reviews about which is the best and which isn't. And it is rather amazing how much security we have to put on our machines to keep them protected from our own government and the cyber criminals. But again, if you just clean out all the advertising-ware and everything, you'll be surprised how fast your machine gets.
Okay, great. And what was the name of the program that blocks Windows 10 from installing?
GWX Control Panel, but you don't need to worry about that one anymore, because the free upgrade is, if it hasn't already ended, it's about to, and after that, it's going to be $130 to upgrade, unless you go for the subscription model.
Oh, okay, excellent. And well, thanks for that. I made notes, and I just wanted to mention that part of my point was that I have not allowed Microsoft to update anything on this machine past Service Pack 1, and I've had 3 years of happy use out of my machine. So I'm just saying that if we want to avoid the risk that they're trying to open up backdoors and all of these complaints that we're having, it's not, you don't actually have to let them into the machine.
No, you don't. You absolutely don't. And I do not allow updates on any of our machines, primarily because of the recent spate of Microsoft patches, which actually cause damage, and in some cases have actually paralyzed and bricked machines. Again, Microsoft, like everybody else, they're cutting corners. They're not testing this stuff before it goes on out. They've created this hideous Gordian's knot of overlapping layers, some of them inherited from all the way back Windows NT. Because of that, you get a machine and it's working, lock it down. Don't allow anybody to get into it.
Totally agree with you. I just customize exactly the way I like it. Make a disk image onto an external portable hard drive, and then it's literally like a couple of buttons to be pushed once or twice a year to restore it back to this perfect image. And anyway, thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome. And one final thing, I mean, we're all in a bind here, because we know that when these operating systems come out of the box, they are full of problems and bugs. That's the new model. We've got a new operating system. We want to get it on the market. We know there's about 4,000 or 5,000 things wrong with it. We'll fix them later. And so, if you're not using anything that's got the bugs in it, that's okay. But if you need the bugs repaired, it's a very convoluted process to go through and identify the patches that fix the real problems while avoiding the patches that cause more damage. And the way Microsoft labels their updates, and it's an obfuscated system. It's not set up to allow you to pick and choose which updates you want. And that's a real problem there. Thanks an awful lot for that. We're going to let you go, Mateus. Did James in Japan ever call back?
No, not yet.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much here. Now then, speaking about computers, if you watch a lot of movies and TV about the government, like the Bourne TDM or the rest of it. They always have the latest and greatest and most beautiful computers. The reality is actually quite different. We've been reporting on these stories about the very ancient, antiquated computers that are in use by much of the government, such as the Internal Revenue Service, where they've actually had to strike deals with Microsoft to go on maintaining XP on their computers because they don't want to go through the hassle of upgrading. And apparently, one of the reasons why getting Freedom of Information Act requests handled over at the Department of Justice is they're using a system that's borderline museum display, and they're not interested in being expeditious about this. All right, we're going to talk to Mary in New Jersey. Aloha, Mary. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. With the people talking about the computer, last October, I was doing something online and I couldn't get the HTML to show up correctly. So the guy suggested update your browsers, which I did, the Firefox and Google. So after I updated, I got all kinds of problems. One, doing marketing, Google would not allow any sites through to show up if they weren't secure with the S. And also on Firefox, I think I discovered, maybe it was a pirated one, but it let in this horrible virus, and it went into the JavaScript or something. After a few months, I discovered a really great program, Malwarebytes.
Yes.
Spelled with a BYTES, and it worked great to take out. Well, you get a 10-day free trial, and then it was about $19 for the year.
Yeah, and I use Malwarebytes here, along with
you do?
Yeah, and along with
It's great. It was
It
the
is.
only. I tried other stuff and nothing worked. It was just horrible.
Yeah, it
and
is.
now
And again, it's another symptom that we've allowed our computer IT industry to become so complicated. I mean, it's confusing to the people whose full-time jobs are working on this stuff. And you can imagine what the non-sophisticated consumer is having to deal with. And it's another reason why Microsoft is losing customers over to Apple, because Apple's design philosophy all along has been to make computers as appliances for people who don't want to be computer geeks. And it's a strategy that has worked over time. They've gotten a larger and larger share of the computer market out there.
Yeah, and I'm not a geek or anything, but I try to market online. You know, I'm trying to figure this stuff out after retiring, and I really, you really start getting desperate. But I don't. I mean, I use Google, but I haven't downloaded the program. I won't do that. You know.
Well, Google is a website. You shouldn't need to download anything. You're talking about Chrome.
Yeah, they want you to. Yeah, I know. They keep asking to download it.
Actually, Chrome is pretty good. My website works best on Firefox and Chrome. The only problem I have with Chrome is that it is a system hog. For some reason, they're running all these asynchronous processes that are always accessing the hard drive to go to the cache. And there is apparently some kind of a bug that everybody knows about but nobody can fix, where if you're looking at Facebook through Chrome, it will just get very, 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 very slow.
And plus, I do the marketing. You know, I'm trying to learn this and put ads in and stuff like that. And if you have certain ads, I mean, my own ads, Google was blocking them. It wouldn't allow my stuff to show up. So that was the problem. Before that, I liked it. You know.
Well, I think there's a setting in where you can say secure only or non-secure. I think you need to make friends with somebody at your local Geek Squad and have them come in and take a look at your machine. Cause
no, my son-in-law actually is specialist in this. He's not only
you better be really nice to him. All right. Well, listen. I wish you luck. I know how frustrating computers can be, and I'm not a neophyte. I've been working with computers. Well, I built my first computer out of telephone relays in high school, And I've lived my entire life with them. And even today, it's just so complicated trying to get all this stuff to work together. And I really enjoyed the days when a computer was simple enough where a single individual could know what was going on inside. I still have my old Commodore VIC-20. And by the way, it still works perfectly.
I remember a friend who had one.
Yeah, that's when computers were fun and they did what you told them to do and didn't give you a lot of grief here. I mean, we're at the point right now where I'll be watching TV and all of a sudden it comes up in the middle of the show saying, we need to update your firmware. And boy, I miss the days when TVs just had two knobs on them, off on volume and the channel selector, and that's all I really wanted.
I know.
And now I've got a remote control that looks as complicated as the space shuttle cockpit.
I agree.
All right. Well, listen, Mary, we got to let you go. We're coming up on a commercial break. Thank you very much for the phone call. Bye-bye. Now then, as I mentioned earlier in that call, we have snow on 5 European countries happening here in July. They got 10 days of snow. The strawberry crops have been lost in Switzerland. Tomato crops, dairy industry. Tell us about human-caused global warming. Also, another story coming on out of naturalnews.com. A neuroscience journal has just published a study confirming that fluoride in drinking water impairs brain development, turning us all into happy little mushrooms that will just do what the government tells us to do here. Apparently, there's a new VIP child sex abuse scandal. 14 new corruption inquiries leveled against the London police. Looks like the police have been watching too much of those Oakland Police Department antics out there. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. I love this one. Up in Canada, there's a priest, Amar Saka, has been suspended from his diocese and arrested. Apparently, he gambled away $500,000 that was supposed to be for Syria refugee aid. I'm sure he was out there saying, God is going to make me win all these throws of the dice, and I'll have much more money to give to Syria. Guess it didn't work out all that much, did it? You know, I mean, the gambling casinos are set up to work against you. I mean, if that game were 22 instead of 21, I would have owned the Las Vegas Strip by now. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Last segment of our program today, and I have a little bit of a program note. John Stadmiller has apparently discovered that gravity is nobody's friend, and I don't have the details. But apparently he is out of commission for today, and so I'm going to be taking the first hour of his show, starting right after my show ends. And if you want to stick around, that would be fine. I'm going to be recapping a lot of the top stories for the benefit of his audience, and I don't know yet who is doing his hour number 2, but I'm sure it's going to be worth sticking around for that as well. Now then, SpaceX has successfully launched a new space station docking port for NASA. And apparently they were able to once again successfully do a vertical touchdown of the rocket. They're trying to get the bugs out of that system. And it's all very science fiction-y, the rocket coming down and landing on its tail. And we saw that in all the 1950s science fiction movies. And they even did it in You Only Live Twice, the James Bond movie. And so they're trying to get that working out just fine. Now, here's a very, very bizarre example of just how out of control intellectual property rights have become. There's an article over at Alternet talking about how you could be thrown in prison for sharing your Netflix password. And apparently there's this overly broad court ruling is out there saying that if you share your Netflix password, you can go to jail. And apparently it's so broad that it also includes the head of a household sharing the Netflix password with his wife, his son, and his daughter. I mean, that's the new model. You all have your own Netflix accounts. You're not allowed to share the Netflix on your TV set. I mean, it really has reached an absolutely ridiculous stage. And the more they impose all of this intellectual property and copyright protection and, blocking all this, they make it such a headache, most of us tune out. And they're trying to blame the decline in entertainment media profits on piracy, and yes, it's a problem, but it's also due to the declining economy and the reality that because Hollywood has become so politically correct, they don't really come out with anything that's all that interesting anymore. They're doing, comic book movies and repeats and sequels and redos, and we've all seen the stories already. And I remember when I first set up this machine and I got Blu-ray disc drives and high-def monitors and everything, I figured, oh, great, I can play my Blu-ray discs on my computer while I work. And then I ran smack into the fact that these monitors don't have the special chip in there that says, I am not a recording device, therefore you can display, which nobody told me about when I bought the monitors. And so my solution was, I've quit watching Blu-rays. I got a case of DVDs and a few Blu-rays. I hardly never bother looking at them anymore. I'm tired of dealing with all the button pushing. It just isn't worth it anymore for the poor quality product that we're being dealt with. All right, there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. I'm going to be back in a few minutes here with John Stedmiller's show. Please stay tuned.